The top business stories live from the Sky Newsroom. The oil price has stabilised this afternoon despite the Iranian parliament voting to shut down a major shipping lane. A spark of hope for the manufacturing sector as the government slashes green energy taxes for businesses in its industrial strategy. Plus, what does that government industrial strategy do for the science sector? I'll be joined by the president of Imperial College London. Very good afternoon. Welcome to Business Live with me, Darren McCaffrey, on this Monday afternoon. Well, Wall Street has kicked off the week with mild gains in stocks as oil price fell amidst easing fears of an imminent disruption to crude oil supplies from the Middle East. Investors are awaiting signs of Iran's response to US attacks on its nuclear sites, and with no visible disruption to those shipping routes yet, tensions do appear, for the time being, to be easing. Let's delight to say we can bring in James Gillert, who's Executive Chair of Rapid Ratings International. That's a risk analytical platform that measures the financial risk of suppliers on behalf of Fortune 500 companies. Very good afternoon to you, James. And it does feel at the moment that, yes, things have eased a little, but we are still watching and waiting.
That's exactly right. It's good to be with you. And I think today the name of the day, or the name of the game, is wait and see. But really the challenge here is that this strike in Iran comes at a time when there is so much concern by the global business community about geopolitical unrest anyway. And there's so much disruption to supply chains globally, in part, not exclusively, but in part because of the tariff policies of the United States government, and then the retaliatory tariffs that are threatened or coming in place, that everyone's on tenterhooks anyway. So the question of, or the potential for, disruption to oil prices and a spike in prices is something that really has everyone in a wait and see, but a very tender wait and see mode.
And that's the point, isn't it, James, is there's a lot of different interests in this. You know, Iran will not want to see its oil supply cut off, even if it's by itself, given the fact that it's pretty important for its economy. Much of that oil goes to China. And also, the United States, as you say, at a time in which there's concerns about the global economy, won't want to necessarily cause even more harm.
Well, that's right. Look, the Strait of Hormuz is really the issue right now, and from an economics and business standpoint. And if Iran were to shut that down with 20% of the world's oil supply flowing through it, we then have once again a massive supply chain bottleneck. And every company, whether they are directly reliant on oil and petroleum products for the goods that they manufacture, or they are simply exposed to it because they have heavy logistics elements of their businesses where they are distributing products that have to go over land and or overseas, and therefore are exposed to oil prices. This can have an additional ripple effect on the cost basis of companies. And keep in mind that every company in the world today has had to throw out their 2025 plans because their cost structures are all in limbo as we await more news on tariffs. So with cost of goods across different companies and different industries rising anywhere between 6 and 15 or 16% because of impending tariffs, if you throw more inflationary cost of a component of the business, in this case oil prices, on top of them, that's really, really damaging.
But James, just on oil itself, what is also interesting, given what we've seen in the past with US military intervention, obviously in Iraq and Kuwait in the early 90s, and then again, obviously in the early noughties, is that the United States was reliant on Middle East oil to a degree. That's no longer the case, is it, given the fact that the United States actually is an oil exporter these days?
That's right. From the U.S. perspective, there's a lot less direct exposure here, being a producer, having fracking technology and the ability to extract through shale more easily than we did in prior oil crises in the past. So that's an insulating factor, which undoubtedly was part of the calculus for the administration moving ahead and feeling like they could take this risk. The problem that we face is that from a financial health perspective of large corporations and their middle market and private suppliers upstream in their supply chains, this isn't a one-off issue. This is a compounding effect of years of operational challenges, higher costs of capital, higher costs of goods and labor, and so forth, at a time when we have potential for recession and we've got longer rates, higher rates for a longer period of time. You combine all of those things and you throw another massive potential shock on top of that cost structure, and we're going to see more bankruptcies and more restructurings along the way.
And just very finally, James, I mean, you know, in many ways, obviously, this uncertainty is good for your business in particular, but it must be incredibly difficult with the current US president to try and map out, as you say, with all these different factors, how things might well play out.
Well, the companies that are doing the best job of planning are the ones that are using technologies, rapid ratings, and others to understand better the suppliers that they're exposed to and their customers, and using analytics and embedding it in their business processes to do as much collaboration with their suppliers as possible in order to understand how they're going to get through these difficult times. Companies that haven't been doing things like that are more flat-footed and definitely more exposed.
OK, James, we really appreciate your time this afternoon from Rapid Ratings International. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you. Now, the other big business story today is that the government has announced its industrial strategy with plans to cut green taxes on energy costs. The Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, said a little earlier that it was part of a race to drive green power and also, essentially, to try and lower prices for many really intense industry bodies and companies that rely a lot on energy.
Well, there are two things. One, we're very gas intensive. You know, gas sets our electricity price. Gas prices after Ukraine went up, that's left us very exposed. You're right to say how we deal with some of those policy costs in the UK is different to a France or to a Germany. They've got different approaches to each other. But look, clean energy and climate is a massive growth opportunity. I've got billions of pounds of investment coming into the UK. That is great. But I want that alongside being competitive for industry. I don't want to put those industries overseas and import those products back. That's not the right thing for climate. And I think the last government was negligent to see industrial energy prices rise so much and not have an answer to it.
Well, this is the current Business Secretary. Earlier, I had a chance to speak to Greg Clark. He's the former Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. And I asked him about how the new plan will impact the energy market.
We need to have in my view, a kind of big reform of energy markets, and the government have committed to do that. The prices in this country are out of line with others, despite the fact that we have very good sources of renewable energy coming in at a low price. But this is a competitive situation now, and I think the government are right to act on those industries that are particularly exposed. Manufacturing industry, including steel, ceramics, cement making, to make sure that we don't lose those industries while we transition to what I think has to be in the long term a more competitive and more comparable set of energy prices.
What do you think has got wrong in the past here, though, Greg? And I just don't mean with energy prices. I mean with industrial strategies in this country. I read a piece that you had written, welcoming the fact that the government, clearly in what you're doing now, that they are investing long-term in things like infrastructure.
Yeah.
Then you look back at last week and HS2, my word, delayed again.
Yeah.
I mean, why? I mean, this stuff shouldn't be that complicated. We've been building railway lines and infrastructure for hundreds of years, and yet we still can't seem to get it right.
Well, I think you put your finger on it. I think we've taken too short-termist an approach to policy when other countries around the world have been able to generate a kind of broad consensus around policy stability for the long term, particularly like on things like infrastructure, investment in skills, investment in research and development. These things pay dividends over the long term. And coming in, sort of tearing things up, sort of scrapping them, is not only doesn't put down the foundations necessary on which to grow, but actually it sends a distress call to investors to say that there is policy instability here and they will then look for long-term investments to other countries. So it's really important that we have a long-term plan. As it happens, I rate the content of it. I think it's done seriously. But just to have something that you can tell the rest of the world anyway, that this is what we're about, this is what our policy environment is, it's important that that is stable. And I hope that it'll have a broad consensus, including across parties, because it's very much in our national interest that investors thinking about investing in Britain don't think that things are going to chop and change every few years.
Let's get more on this now with Jonathan Clements. He's the Chief Executive of the British Constructional Steelwork Association. Very good afternoon to you, Jonathan. I assume you welcome today's announcement, particularly when it comes to the cost of energy.
Absolutely, yeah. We welcome very much the cost of energy, the recognition of steel as an important strategic industry for the UK. And on top of that, I mean, the BCSA, we've been putting forward for a number of years now the importance of skills, access to finance, and the whole area of procurement and looking at the infrastructure for the UK.
And I'm just reading that, the companies such as or companies such as steel manufacturers in this country are paying 50% more than they do in Germany or in France. That's pretty tough, isn't it, effectively? What impact has that had?
Well, clearly it's impacted the bottom line, which impacts investment. It impacts the ability to make long-term decisions that will be coming through. And as we've seen, obviously the tariffs have exemplified that. But in terms of exporting as well, you've just become uncompetitive in what is an international trade.
Just in terms of what's going to happen here, because we're not entirely sure how it's going to be paid for, but the steel sector is obviously going to have to still rely on quite intensive energy, if you like, going forward. Are you hopeful that effectively this won't just be something that is short-term, but actually proves to be quite long-term for the sustainability of the steel industry?
Absolutely. I think in the previous interview, Greg Clark picked up on it. It's about a long-term investment. It's about a country having an industrial plan that is providing that stability. Also, there's a requirement for simplicity. And I think the other key part, certainly related to steel, is construction accounts for over 50%. And you need a resilient steel supply chain. So, we've recently written to Jonathan Reynolds about our new deal for steel, which is exactly calling out for that.
And talking about unpredictability, we also have to talk about tariffs, don't we? Have you got any sense of where we're now at? I mean, we had that deal that was signed back in May, but it's not yet been implemented. There's still concerns clearly from the US side. Have you got any update or any sense of where we are?
No, I've got nothing tangible, I'm afraid. I'm just in the same position as many of your viewers are.
I mean, that must be immensely frustrating.
It is immensely frustrating, and it's causing problems not just for the steel companies, the aluminium companies, but also for all those companies that have a high intensity of metals in their exports. And
I assume, as you said, you've written a letter to Jonathan Reynolds about energy. I mean, I assume you're in touch with the government saying, come on, guys, we need this sorted.
We are, absolutely. And it's, and again, the energy is one part. I think also, as we said, it addresses, part of the industrial strategy that we're really encouraged by is the skills, but it does need to get sorted. And one area in particular is procurement. We've heard there about the green energy and the move there for offshore and onshore plus solar. But, we've also got a lot of old infrastructure in the UK that requires some serious investment. Certainly, if you're looking at the recent intervention at British Steel Scunthorpe, what are the policy going to be in and around UK manufactured goods?
OK, Jonathan, really appreciate your time this afternoon. Jonathan Clements there from the British Constructional Steelwork Association. Thank you. Just going to bring you up to date with some breaking news coming into us here at Sky Centre, and that is from Qatar, which says that it is temporarily shutting its airspace in order to ensure what it says is the safety of citizens, residents and visitors. Of course, Doha is a major international hub. It's become an international hub in recent years, with Qatar Airlines flying people all over the world. Well, as I say, Qatar is now announcing it is temporarily shutting down its airspace. We've had this statement in saying that in line with the state of Qatar's commitment to ensuring the safety of its citizens, residents and visitors, the relevant authorities have announced the temporary suspension of air navigation in the country's airspace. This measure is part of a set of precautionary procedures taken in response to developments in the region. It confirms that official bodies are continuously and closely monitoring the situation, assessing developments in coordination with regional and international partners. And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs reaffirms that the safety and security of all individuals on Qatari soil remains a top priority, and that the state will not hesitate to take all necessary preventative measures within its framework. So quite a significant development in the last couple of minutes coming from Qatar, as a major international travelling hub in the Middle East, obviously just across the Strait of Hormuz from Iran, announcing that it will temporarily suspend its airspace to ensure the safety of citizens, residents and visitors. We'll have more on that story as we get it here on Sky News and indeed on the News Hour from 5 o'clock. OK, just to let you know that you can also keep up to date with all the money news today, including developments in the industrial strategy and the oil price on our money blog. All you need to do is scan the QR code that's on your screen right now. OK, you're watching Business Live here on Sky. Up next, we're going to take a look at how Labour's new plan for business will impact the life of science, of life sciences, as you'd say, and the tech sector. That's up next.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Turkey is burying its dead.
Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out. I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News, get the full story first.
This is the game changer seat. Look, it even comes with binoculars. Flying units fly better. Thank you.
Welcome back to Business Live. Now, the energy component of the government's new industrial strategy has grabbed the headlines today, but it's pretty wide-ranging. So what does it mean for the science and innovation sector? Delighted to say we can speak to Professor Hugh Brady. He is president of Imperial College London and joins us from central London. Hugh, very good afternoon to you. Harold Wilson famously talked about the white heat of technology back in the 1960s. Is this an equivalence today, what we've heard?
It is indeed. The white heat is back. I think, we welcome the strategy. We particularly welcome the high potential sectors that have been chosen. They build on a track record of achievement in the UK, but also they're areas where there's so much more potential. Of course, we're delighted that there's such an emphasis on talent, not just nurturing our own, but attracting the brightest and the best from across the globe, and that it builds on the commitment to R&D investment that has been made over the past years and will increase over the lifetime of this Parliament. So a real opportunity, I think, for the UK to turbocharge its efforts in science and technology for economic growth and job creation.
Hugh, is this primarily about money? Is that what really matters here?
No, I think absolutely not. In fact, I think the money was given previous budgets. Nothing is given nowadays, but actually it's the holistic approach, I think, which is most welcome. So it is, where are we going to get the people from? What does that skills pipeline look like? What does that visa environment look like? Getting the balance right between the fantastic education in our universities with what we need to come through FE. Getting things like regulation, procurement, slashing the time it takes for approval of clinical trials. It's very much a holistic approach that actually is very ambitious, very timely, and I think should position us really well for success over the decade ahead.
Hugh, what's fascinating about this, I read a piece where you were saying the UK is only 0.8% of the world's population, but we produce some 13% of the cited papers, which is, quite impressive, and a reminder that we've got an incredible university sector, including Imperial. And this does lead to kind of startups starting here in Britain, doesn't it? But then they often get gobbled up by bigger American companies, and we don't seem very good at... We seem great at inventing stuff or coming up with startups, but not very good at developing them. And is that fair to say?
Yeah, Darren, I think that you've summarised the challenge. So we have a phenomenal sector, as you say. Last year, 4 universities in the top 10, 17 in the top 100. I mean, most countries would look at that with envy. Per pound invested, we are as good at the US in licensing, patenting, and starting up companies. But the challenge is actually to scale them and to keep them here. So that's where, again, going back to the holistic view, it's not just the investment in R&D that we welcome. It's, for example, the increased funding for the British Business Bank. It's the building on the Mansion House reforms so that hopefully we get more pension funds into the venture capital sector. So it's not just one particular element. It's actually the constellation that, if acting in concert, should allow us to compete over the decade ahead.
And your kind of main message, I suppose, is because universities have been under attack quite a lot in recent years is that it kind of all starts there, if you like. You know, it flows from the university sector, from education.
Absolutely. If you don't have that talent pipeline, and if you don't have the discovery through mission, through applied R&D, you're just not at the races. So what we really welcome is the overt recognition of the quality of the universities, but the potential that we have to make an even better contribution. And we're up for that challenge.
And just very finally on that, and we've got about 20 seconds, I assume then you're trying to attract some of that talent from Donald Trump's United States.
It's already coming. It's already coming, both in terms of students and staff. I mean, we pride ourselves in targeting the brightest and best minds from within the UK and across the world. That will continue. Every cloud is a silver lining, maybe.
OK, Hugh, great to chat to you. Really appreciate your time. Hugh Brady there, the president of Imperial College London. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Sky News. OK, that is it from me on Business Live for this afternoon. Of course, we're back tomorrow morning at 11:30. Do join me 10 if you can. Up next, it is the News Hour with Jonathan here in London, Yalda in Jerusalem, including continuing coverage of the escalation tensions we're seeing between Iran, Israel and the United States. I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.